guys, so for today's video I'm going to be starting a brand new series that I'm going to call Library Checkout. In this series I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 to 7 books that I check out at the library and tell you what I think about them. For those of you who do not know, I'm an extremely avid reader. I love to read. I do it constantly. There is not a time where you will not see me with a book unless I am eating or sleeping. Since I adore reading so much, I thought that it was time that I shared my insane book passion on this channel with you guys. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. So the first book that I read this time around in my library checkout is Death Note Volume 4. I started reading Death Note because I haven't watched the anime yet and I wanted to get around to it, but I kind of wanted to at least read the manga until then. And so I am on the 4th volume and I'm going to quickly read the synopsis. Love with two Kiras on the loose, L asks Light to join the task force and pose as the real Kira in order to catch the copycat. L still suspects Light and figures that this is the perfect excuse to get closer to his quarry. Light agrees to the plan in order to have free access to the task force resources. But when Light manages to contact the new Kira, he discovers that his rival is anything but as expected. Will Light escape from love unscathed? So I gave this 5 out of 5 stars and I just enjoy the series a lot. I think that it's really an interesting concept in that, you know, you can write someone's name in a notebook and they die in whatever way you choose. It has, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other rules that go with it, but I just really enjoy the series and I think it's really worth taking the time to read. The only thing that bugs me about Death Note at all is Light's perspective in that he wants to use this to just kill a bunch of people. I don't think that's the way to go. That's my only issue with it, but other than that, it's a really, really good series. So in this particular section, when the second Kira is revealed, it's interesting that because this girl is ends up being a girl, first of all, but she is kind of very infatuated with Light and is totally okay with the idea of, you know, him being Kira and killing people because Light, when he was using the Death Note, killed the robber who had killed her parents. And so I suppose she feels a sort of loyalty to that. And I mean, I guess, you know, you could see why she would do that, but it's just, I think mass killing people is not any good because that kind of makes you just as low as the criminals, but what are you gonna do? And so I just really enjoy this series in general. It's really, really good and well written. So the next book that I read was Death Note Volume 5. The last one that I read was 4 and it was called Love. I totally forgot to mention that it was called Love. Sorry. That's why randomly in the synopsis I said Love, and so I'm just going to read the whiteout synopsis, which is what Volume 5 is called. After a week locked up with no one but Ryuk for company, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce the name. I'm sorry if it's wrong, okay? Light is ready to give up his Death Note and all memories of it. Freed from his past actions, Light is convinced he's innocent. But L is ready to keep Light under lock and key forever, especially since the killing stopped once Light was incarcerated. Then a new wave of Kira crimes hits Japan. Someone has gotten their hands on a Death Note, and these new deaths aren't focused on making the world a better place, they're focused on making money. Big business can be murder, and Kira has gone corporate. So I thought this was an interesting route for Death Note to go. I didn't really expect Light to kind of give up the Death Note so easily, and it was interesting to me that it just kind of lets go, and now I'm kind of like, well, what's gonna happen with Light? Like, does he get it back eventually? I don't really know what's gonna happen next, but it's interesting now that it's kind of moved into a corporate world setting where like big businessmen are killing off people. For a while when I was reading this, I thought that Light was just faking it and that he had some kind of like subconscious, I don't know, some kind of subconscious memory or subconscious like plan that he was gonna get the Death Note back later and continue his work. I just love where the plot is going and I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the next ones to come. The next book that I checked out was called This Monstrous Thing by Mackenzie Lee and is actually a novel. It is not a manga. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars and I will read the synopsis really quickly as well. In 1818 Geneva, men built with clockwork parts live hidden away from society, cared for only by illegal mechanics called shadow boys. 2 years ago, shadow boy Alistair Finch's life shattered to bits. His brother Oliver dead, his sweetheart Mary gone, his chance to break free of Geneva lost. lost. Heartbroken and desperate, Alistair does the unthinkable. He brings Oliver back from the dead, and putting back together a broken life is more difficult than mending bones and adding clockwork pieces. Oliver returns more monster than man, and Alistair's horror further damages the already troubled relationship. Then comes the publication of Frankenstein, and the city intensifies its search for Shadow Boys, aiming to discover the real-life Doctor and his monster. Alistair finds refuge with his idol, the brilliant Dr. Geyser, who may offer him a way to escape the dangerous present and his guilt-ridden past, but at a horrible price only Oliver can pay. So that's the general synopsis of this Monstrous thing, and when I first read it, I was like, this sounds so interesting. It sounds so cool, and it's definitely well done. I think the writing is incredible. It's so descriptive, and you can really kind of feel how everything is happening, and not only that, but kind of sense it, because there's a lot about the environment as well. It's not just about feeling an emotion, but it's also about the environment. You can kind of like feel the slipperiness of, you know, the canal, or you can feel, you know, the brittleness of the cold and that kind of thing. And I just really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I also thought the plot was very original. Like, it was taken obviously from Frankenstein inspiration, but it turned it into something that was kind of different and used brothers instead of just a doctor and a monster, and it used clockwork gears as opposed to human body parts. And so I just thought it was really well done. I really loved Alistair, actually. He's a bit broody, but I mean, he kind of has the right to be, I guess, because he brought back his dead brother, and it's been a struggle because Oliver's just raging. I love also the character Clemens. It has a little accent, and I'm pretty sure it's some kind of French name, but I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Anyway, I love Clemens. I think that she's great, and she is an LGBT character. She's actually lesbian, and I really love when they incorporate LGBT into literature, just because I feel like they're very underrepresented. But it was just so well done, and the characters are good, and they're full, and they're all individual. They don't kind of repeat with one another, and there's plot twists that you don't expect, and you're like, what the fuck? Oh my gosh. It was really, really well done, and I 100% recommend that you read this book. So the next book that I had checked out from the library is called Illuminate, and it is the first book of a series, and I'm going to, again, read the synopsis. This morning, Katie thought breaking up with Ezra was the hardest thing she'd have to do. This afternoon, her planet was invaded. The year is 2575, and two rival megacorporations are at war over a planet that's a little more than an ice-covered speck at the edge of the universe. Too bad nobody thought to warn the people living on it. With enemy fire raining down on them, Katie and Ezra, who are barely even talking to each other, are forced to fight their way into an evacuating fleet with an enemy warship in hot pursuit. But their problems are just getting started. A deadly plague has broken out and is mutating with terrifying results. The fleet's AI, which should be protecting them, may actually be their enemy, and nobody in charge will say what's really going on. As Katie hacks into a tangled web of data to find the truth, it's clear only one person can help her bring it all to light: the ex-boyfriend she swore she'd never speak to again. Told through a fascinating dossier of hacked documents, including emails, schematics, military files, IMs, medical reports, interviews, and more. Illuminate is the first book in a heart-stopping, high-octane trilogy about lives interrupted, the price of truth, and the courage of everyday heroes. So I gave this 5 out of 5 because it's so fucking good. It's so imaginative. Like, what? Who would think of this? Like, the way that it's written is not your traditional novel. Like, as it said in the synopsis, it's written as a whole huge file of documents, and you read website pages, you read IMs, you read medical reports, and you read through these and you still get the story. There was like a huge plot twist that I was like, what the fuck? It was so just heart-stopping, and like the way that it ends is super just, you want to keep reading. You want to keep reading towards the end. And the great thing about this book is also the aesthetic of all the pages, because as you read through them, like, there are some instances where the AI is speaking and the pages are black and they have white text and they swirl through the page, and it's so artistically beautiful, and the story itself doesn't get lost with all that kind of design to it. It's really something that is very powerful, and you can kind of feel something for each of the characters, even if you don't get a whole lot of their own perspective, even if you don't like get all of their thoughts or whatever it is like you would in a normal novel. You still get the sense that you can feel for these characters and you grow attached to them. And when things happen that aren't that great, because this is a huge war situation, you feel the heartbreak, you feel the pain, and it's so well done. And I just, oh, did I say who it was by? By Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Sorry, I didn't say who it was by. But Illuminate, it's definitely one you need to read. It's fantastic. I will say though, if you don't like long books, it's about this thick. It's like 400 something pages, I think. Just throwing that out there. But it's very good. Extremely well done. Go read it now. The next book that I read was called P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han. It is the second book in a duology of the To All the Boys I Loved Before series. And the synopsis is, Laura Jean didn't expect to really fall for Peter. She and Peter were just pretending, except suddenly they weren't. Now Laura Jean is more confused than ever when another boy from her past returns to her life. Laura Jean's feelings for him return too. Can a girl be in love with two boys at once? In this charming and heartfelt sequel to the New York Times bestseller To All the Boys I've Loved Before, we see first love through the eyes of the unforgettable Laura Jean. Love is never easy, but maybe that's part of what makes it so amazing. So for this book, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I liked the fluff at the end, and certain parts were really fluffy and cute. My issue with it came with the writing. It seemed a little bit immature, and the other part of it was just because I didn't really... there was just some parts of the characters that I just really didn't like. Like, for a little while, the little sister, Kitty, she was just being kind of obnoxious. And I should have seen this coming, because if you read the first book, then, you know, she wasn't that great of a sister. I didn't really care much for her, and I also didn't really care much about how Peter was reacting to a certain part that happens in the book. And then I think Laura Jean was also not dealing and handling things well. I think that it just could have been dealt with a lot better. And I know that there's a whole point to the book where like characters kind of like don't communicate, and it's supposed to be that way, so that way when they do communicate, they find out that they love each other and it's okay. But I mean, it's just... it was just kind of like an okay book, but I gave it the extra star for the fluff because I live for the fluff. After that book, I read If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo, and the description is, Amanda Hardy is the new girl in school in Lambertville, Tennessee. Like any other girl, all she wants is to make friends and fit in. But Amanda is keeping a secret. There's a reason why she transferred schools for her senior year and why she's determined not to get too close to anyone. And then she meets Grant Everett. Grant is unlike anyone she's ever met. Open, honest, kind, and Amanda can't help but start to let him into her life. As they spend more time together, she finds herself yearning to share with Grant everything about herself, including her past. But she's terrified that once she tells Grant the truth, he won't be able to see past it. Because the secret that Amanda has been keeping is that she used to be Andrew. So for this book, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was just really well done. I thought that it was really good, and it was also very snappy. Like, I like books that can kind of get to the point and don't drag on. If there's a slow-paced book, it's just really such a bummer because I can't stand it, and I thought that this was really snappy and very fast-paced. I also just really liked the fact that Amanda kind of grew and was able to kind of open up about stuff, because she was very kind of like closed in with herself. And you know, I understand that, like, especially particularly with the South, unfortunately, like it kind of tends to be a very conservative place. Like, not everybody in there is super mega conservative, but it's kind of just, you know, the general. What I also loved about this was the transformation of her dad, because her dad was very just not that good of a father in terms of dealing with her transition and that kind of thing. And so it was great to see him kind of turn around, and I just really enjoyed it. And so there's that. So then the next book that I read was called The Raven Boys by Maggie Stavfaver. I've heard her name, but I can't pronounce it properly. I have to keep hearing it again. But anyway, I read a book by her. And here's the description. Every year, Blue Sargent stands next to her chavoyant mother as the soon-to-be dead walk past. Blue never sees them. Until this year, when a boy emerges from the dark and speaks to her. His name is Gainsey, a rich student at Allaganby, the local private school. Blue has a policy of staying away from Allaganby boys. Known as Raven Boys, they can only mean trouble. But Blue is drawn to Gainsey in a way she can't entirely explain. He is on a quest that has encompassed encompass 3 other Raven boys: Adam, the scholarship student who resents the privilege around him; Ronan, the fierce soul whose emotions range from anger to despair; and Noah, the taciturn watcher who notices many things but says very little. For as long as she can remember, Blue has been warned that she will cause her true love to die. She doesn't believe in true love and never thought this would be a problem, but as her life becomes caught up in the strange and sinister world of the Raven boys, she is not so sure anymore. I've heard about this series being talked about a lot, and especially with books by Lala, who is a booktuber. She really loves this series, like it's one of her favorites, and so I was like, I'll give it a read. Why not? And so I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars, and it was just so good. It was written in third person, which is interesting, but it didn't make it sterile. Like a lot of the time when third person tends to happen, it can be kind of stiff and sterile and really formal, but for this book it just kept it really lively. I think the plot is super interesting. Like you would think that like for, you know, a young adult novel and, you know, it's saying that, oh, your true love's gonna die if you kiss him, blah blah blah, like that sounds really kind of cliche and dumb, but in this context it was really well done, and it wasn't the whole focus of it. The whole focus of it wasn't the relationship, it was really just kind of trying to figure out what was happening and what was going on, and I think that it's just extremely well done. You fall in love with the characters, but I just love that this was more of a kind of fantasy novel too. It was really interesting to kind of get into a different fantasy realm that wasn't just like witches and wizards and that kind of thing. This was centered around more psychics and that whole line of work. But if you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy very complex storylines, if you enjoy thrill and excitement and fighting, read it. Read this book. Also complicated relationships. If you enjoy those too, definitely in this book. And then finally, the last book that I read for this library checkout is called None of the Above by I.W. Gregorio. A groundbreaking story about a teenage girl who discovers she was born intersex and what happens when her secret is revealed to the entire school. Incredibly compelling and sensitively told, None of the Above is a thought-provoking novel that explores what it means to be a boy, a girl, or something in between. What if everything you knew about yourself changed in an instant? When Kristen Latimer is voted homecoming queen, it seems like another piece of her ideal life has fallen into place. She's a champion hurdler with a full scholarship to college, and she's madly in love with her boyfriend. In fact, she's decided that she's ready to take things to the next level with him. But Kristen's first time isn't the perfect moment she planned. Something is very wrong. A visit to the doctor reveals the truth. Kristen is intersex, which means that though she outwardly looks like a girl, she has male chromosomes, not to mention boy parts. Dealing with her body is difficult enough, but when her diagnosis is leaked to the whole school, Kristen's entire identity is thrown into question. As her world unravels, can she come to terms with her new self? For this book, I gave it only 3 stars, and that's because it was one of those slow-paced books. I thought the writing was okay, and the plot, I love the fact that it wants to promote the awareness of intersex and kind of teaching people about it so that they can be educated and be more tolerant. But I just didn't like Kristen. I feel just like her friends and her family like just kind of coddled her in a way that kind of suppressed her growth, because there's a part in the book where she's getting bullied, and it's horrible that she's been getting bullied, but rather than stopping the bullies, you know, the counselor just kind of lets her leave school and lets her just stay at home. And I'm like, that's not dealing with the problem. That's avoiding the problem. That's catering to her fear and not letting her kind of grow into acceptance and being able to stand up against these awful people. And people should put more emphasis on stopping the bullying rather than, okay, well, we're just gonna take you out of school then for like 6 weeks so that way you can kind of handle everything. That's just an awful way to deal with any kind of situation. Like, you can't just run away from it because it's still gonna be there. And so that's why I think it took so long for her to finally just kind of at least be on the track to acceptance and that kind of thing. I just didn't really care for this book. You know, like I said, the characters were just kind of shitty. The plot was dragged out for far too long, I think. But that was the last book that I read for this library checkout month, and I liked it. I liked doing this. I think it was fun. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did and you want to see more of this kind of series, then please do give it a thumbs up. It would really help me out to kind of know basically if people, at least in general, like this. I really want to be able to share books with you guys. And if you want to see some more videos from me and you want to see more of this series, then please do hit subscribe. And until next time, bye-bye. No. Boss. No. Fuck.